Maybe, can you tell how many people are watching?
It'll tell me, yeah. Tells me like actively how many viewers there are. All right.
I'm going to have to tilt this microphone down because I am not the same height as Luke. Folks, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I want to welcome you to our final program in this year's Historic Preservation Lecture Series. We're delighted that you came out on a very chilly and cold winter evening. So thank you for being here with us. My name is Olivia Brown. I am the Executive Director at the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society, and I'm really happy that we have been a part of this lecture series since its inception. We started it this summer. Tonight's talk will be the third and final program of the year that's been part of this collaboration. So the Historic Preservation Lecture Series is a collaboration among 4 different groups: the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society, which I'm representing, but also Preservation Piedmont, the Albemarle County Historic Preservation Committee, and the City of Charlottesville Historic Resources Committee. We all believe that the field of historic preservation is an important one, and it can take many forms. So our goal with these programs has been to bring together members of our community to show the many forms preservation can take and the importance of keeping our local history alive. So thank you so much to all of our partner organizations and speakers who have made this program series such a success so far. You'll hear from our partners from Preservation Piedmont here in just a moment as well. You may have received, when you came in, an informational brochure about the work that ACHS has done this past year and the many ways that we have worked to bring history to our local community through programming, education, and many, many other opportunities. If you are not a member of the Historical Society, we hope that you will consider joining us. And if you are a member and haven't renewed, now is the wonderful time to do so. We're very excited to be in a phase of growth, and I hope many of you will join us in the upcoming journey that we are on. We are excited about our end of year campaign with an anonymous donor who has pledged up to $50,000 for every dollar match. So we are hoping that we can reach that goal. And I hope some of you will consider a donation to the Historical Society as part of holiday season. I want to thank you again for the support that you all have given us. And I know that you will enjoy tonight's talk. It's my pleasure to turn over the microphone to Genevieve Keller, the president of Preservation Piedmont, to tell you a little bit about their organization.
Thanks, Olivia, and welcome all of you. It's great to see you on a cold December afternoon at a time of year when everyone's very, very busy. Preservation Piedmont, like Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society, is in the giving time of year as well. We didn't send out a Giving Tuesday email blast because we hope every day is a giving opportunity that works with your cycle, and I know some of you are already members and some of you are already generous donors, and we welcome new members as well. And as Olivia said, it's a good time to renew, and we hope you belong to both of our organizations. I'm so excited that we can collaborate and try to continue to grow and strengthen the preservation history community in Charlottesville, Albemarle, and the Piedmont region, because that's what we're all doing, and it takes all of us to do that. And this year in particular, we have a whole new General Assembly. We have a new governor coming in, and some of preservation, unfortunately, comes down to politics. And I'm also involved with Preservation Virginia, our statewide preservation organization. And every year we hire a lobbyist and we monitor the legislation that's coming through the General Assembly. And every year we hold our breath and hope that we can hang on to our state tax credits for certified historic rehabilitations. And that's what you're going to hear a little bit about later from our speaker, Luke. And that is something that really makes a difference. Virginia has consistently been in the top 2 or 3 of the states in the United States with its historic tax preservation credits that are really driving the economy. They're labor intensive. They bring tax revenues to localities and income, and they regenerate historic buildings. This building was not a tax credit project, a little too early and in that cycle. But this building that we're in is an adaptive use. It was a school. I graduated from this high school. It's now a county office building. If you look up 4th Street a little bit, the historic Jefferson School was a tax credit project. And it would not have become the thriving nonprofit center that it is today without those tax credits. It added the federal tax credits to the state tax credits, and that amounted to $2.5 million of the financing of a $6 million project. So it's something that really does make a difference. And if you don't belong also to Preservation Virginia, join up with them as well and sign up for the preservation tax alerts so that you can write to your legislators or to the governor's office if that's appropriate timing to stay on top of what's happening in historic preservation. We need all voices because we really make a difference in the economy, and of course we make a big difference in the life of culture and arts in all of our communities. So thank you for coming today. Look forward to hearing about a small rural church.
Thanks so much, Jenny, for welcoming people on Preservation Piedmont's behalf as well. It's my pleasure now to introduce you to our speaker, Luke Rourke. Luke is a 3rd-generation Virginia builder. His grandfather, a builder, and his father, a carpenter. He grew up in outside Farmville, Virginia, before making Charlottesville his home. He's the founder and president of Commonwealth Contractors, a residential construction and historic restoration firm that he established in 2020. He's a husband, father, and active community member, and Luke serves as the treasurer of the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society, so we are proud that he is connected with our organization as well. He's on the Regional Housing Partnership under the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission and on the board of LEAP, the Local Energy Alliance Program. The Albemarle Preservation Committee, that is also one of our partnering organizations tonight, and as he is the 2026 president of the Blue Ridge Home Builders Association. So tonight, Luke will speak about Commonwealth Contractors' recent preservation work for developer Mary Krumbine at the historic Monticello Inn Cottage, formerly Slate Hill Baptist Church. This project is an example of how thoughtful historic rehabilitation can stabilize an aging structure, retain its character, and give new life to a building that might otherwise fall into disuse. We're excited to have you hear about this project from Luke, so join me in welcoming Luke. Thank you.
Hey y'all. Thanks for coming out tonight. What we're going to do is go through a PowerPoint and look at this project. I'll start off with the fact that we had a goal when this presentation was scheduled that this project would be finished. A target date of December 31st, but like a lot of things dealing with government funding, tax credits, and of course, construction, it looks like we'll be finishing up in about February. So the job's going through trim outs and finishes, but we're gonna go ahead and show you where we're at and how we got there, okay? All right. So my name's Luke. My company's Commonwealth Contractors. We're located in Court Square. And we like to do as much historic work as we can. Charlottesville, Albemarle is a great area for that. We're very fortunate in that regard. We've got to work on some neat properties. We also do residential construction, custom build, and renovation. This project is known as the Monticello Inn Cottage. I'd like to point out Mary Krumbine, who's our developer and owner of the project. This is Mary's vision. Mary's a developer that's done loads of work in the Richmond area, 20,000 square foot buildings plus, some historic, some not historic, but historic residences and commercial use buildings as well, right? And Mary brought us in on this project in the summer of 2024, and we spent about 3 months studying it and putting together a plan and estimate. The architect is the Yellow Room architectural firm located in Richmond, Virginia. You guys hear me? Okay, great. And it's been a pleasure working with everyone. The job worked through coordination with the Virginia DHR, the Department of Historical Resources, and Sadler Whitehead was the consulting firm that kind of guided Mary through that process and got us where we are. So historic rehabilitation is an important thing, and we're really proud to contribute to this speaker series and be a part of it as a 2025 sponsor, because without historic preservation, these buildings don't necessarily serve a purpose. A lot of historic preservation, as Jenny mentioned, is adaptive reuse, and the way that Mary's put together the vision not only for this building, but this piece of land has been quite impressive. Originally, the land that the church stands on was a part of the Morgan Estate. Show of hands for anyone who's been to the Morgan Estate. Excellent. So right down the road on Rolling Road is the first building you'd see on the left. The church became a meeting house in the early 1800s, and then in 1856, I believe it was set as a church. So there are lots of discoveries to see inside of this building. One of the neat things from the jump, as far as stories that you find in these old buildings, were the old church files. Mary has the original copies, but she was nice enough to leave the photocopy versions with me, and we'll be giving those to the Historical Society if you ever want to drop by and see them. Meticulous notes that were held by the pastor, and really interesting stuff starting in the late 1800s forward. So this is what things look like when we started. The church has its original structure. It has an addition, and then a second addition on the back. This is the primary focus of the DHR, and making sure that we can have this place on the register. The property itself is already under the Southern Albemarle Rural Historical District, but it's actually going to be recognized individually as well. So we get in, and it basically looks like a church. This is a photo that was taken after we moved the pews and the pulpit and all these different things. We had to find where to take all of the Bibles. They made their way to Rappahannock County. That was an adventure. We shelled it out, and we were left with this. So the new program for this building is a bed and breakfast inn cottage style format. But beyond that, Mary has also taken the full piece of land and developed it into a full site plan. Water retention plans, possibly long-term a water pond that's set up through a system of swales and berms will be built into the property. But you'll see in the top, and we'll go through this later, these three sideways rectangles in the large rectangle. So this dark gray area that represents the driveway and the back parking lot. These will be new builds that are placed on site, 3 cottages and 1 full-size unit that's split into 2 separate rentals. We're also going to be putting something that's not in this site plan. It's a change order that was put together, which is a tasting room. We'll have wine and beer tasting there as well. So people can stay at the building, they can come by for a breakfast, they can also visit for wine and beer tasting, and it's much needed lodging for that area around all the vineyards and the historic sites. So this is the new program. What we can focus on talking about tonight is the layout, how we brought things up to a modern standard for the energy and utilities, and the overall functionality of what the building is going to serve purpose as. So the layout itself is interesting on this project because we have individual suites. I wish I had a laser pointer here. But you'll see in the middle section of the building, your 2 bathrooms up top, and in the bottom left of that middle section, an additional bathroom, full baths. Each of these will be their own suite. They'll have their own door, HVAC system, the whole 9 yards, and will serve as rentals. In the back, we have another suite with an ADA accessible bathroom, and we also have a live-in innkeeper space there. Mary, if you don't mind standing up, okay, has actually brought the couple that's going to be operating.
My innkeeper's helping me because I have a husband and school-age kid, and that'll keep anyone cozy.
So they'll be running the property, sometimes staying in the cottage in the back. At other times, they'll use this live-in staff room. On the far right, you'll see the original sanctuary and the vestibule. And then in the bottom left of that sanctuary, you see this new addition that's formed there that has the 2 steps down. And this is a commercial kitchen that's been added to the building so that everyone can host, and we can not only have the people there stay for breakfast, but have people visit for breakfast and lunch and things like that. So pretty plain Jane from the outside of the building. This is after we tore up the driveway and started doing some site development, and it looks like a church that's had 2 additions added to it. This is after we lifted 2 layers of hardwood floor that were in the church. One, a not so old layer, 2-inch hardwood, red oak, and then under that was actually 1.5-inch heart pine floors in varying widths. Really beautiful wood. We'll get to see some of that later. You'll see in the middle of the room, there's a 10-inch by 10-inch beam. For the span of that room, approximately 50 feet, that was 1 piece of wood. So really special thing to see. And then the rounded timbers, again, all's 1850, so your hand mark, axe marks are there, the whole 9 yards. It was a real treat to open this up and see what was there, but when you open up something in these older buildings, you usually come across some variables as well. What we found here, with an expectation that the structure might need a little bit of foundational adjustment, is that we basically didn't have a foundation. Major change order, redrawn back to the structural engineers. Mary was able to turn it around in about a week and a half, and we got to work. So, where you see on the right side of this, that the rounded joist kind of cut out, we've lifted them and placed them on the sides. Someone had gone in and added an HVAC system and just placed that right against that 10 by 10, 50+ foot beam. That beam was rotten out. So we ended up having to take that out, and what would have been footers in the middle section were piles of red brick, piles of Slate Hill Baptist Church, burnt logs, things along these lines. We also took off the drop ceiling, and we lifted what was the flat ceiling from just standard gypsum board, and we exposed this whole, we call it a ceiling part, but what we say is it's like an asymmetrical exposure that Mary's going to leave there, and the DHR wanted to see that in order to recognize the building. You'll see all the light coming through the roof, where these run boards had pulled and spread. And it was an interesting idea that the architects had that Mary worked with them on to figure out what we would do there. What the plans had called for were for us to actually insulate the roof from outside of the building. Pretty neat. Seems like something that our local inspectors weren't so familiar with. We were treating it as if it was attic insulation inspections as opposed to roof decking inspections. So we put about 7 inches of foam on this roof. Now, interestingly enough, you would bring that up to modern code, but the DHR had restrictions due to the design element of the church that they didn't want us to bulk that roof up with so much. So the roof actually meets an R39 code, which is, about 15% less than what you would see in existing code. Right now we're at an R49. The foam was a great idea. The standing seam roof on top obviously is a classic finish. It's basically what was there before. However, once we got into the building and saw how extreme these gaps were, we decided, what are we going to do here? We have to leave an exposed ceiling, but the foam is blue. So the architect had a simple solution. Let's get some 1/4-inch Luan boards and let's sheathe the entire decking with Luan, and then we'll stain that out to match these rafters and run boards. So it was really fun opening this whole building up, and you'll notice that we didn't open the walls, and that's because from floor to ceiling there was beadboard on these walls, and Sadler Whitehead and the DHR and Mary decided that that was going to have to stay on the walls of the building to keep things up to par. We did have to take off drywall to discover all of the white portions, and we were really surprised at the shape that it was in. You'll see later in some photos, we did chop this up to get electrical in and a few other things. But other than taking off the drywall, we opened up the top and the bottom, and there were plenty of surprises. This is a quote from Mary, that we kept as much of the original floor joist structure as possible, but we did have to create a new foundation and replace sections due to termite damage and rot. Now, what that means is we used as many of these rounded timbers as we possibly could to build it back. So we set a Kodak system, we made a map, and we created a legend that would match each piece to where they fit in the notches of that 10 by 10 beam. However, where the beam rotted out, we had to come in with engineered beams attached to it and then spread off standard joists from there. That was a really interesting process. I think all in all, we took out about 13, maybe 14 joists from the building. So there's the beam after we got rid of the rot, and there was our strongest footer that's left standing, some stacked CMU. The burned logs, the brick, we took that out and put it in the dumpster. You'll also notice that there's a CMU foundation under the church that doesn't necessarily scream 1850s, right? The church members had added that in and dug out, and great effort. It's a church congregation, but it wasn't done to what would last. To say the least, it's not the code, but even with it not meeting code, it was just done wrong. What we had to do instead of suspending this whole building is take this out in 4-foot sections as needed and repair it. A lot of the sidewalls didn't require that, but they did require repointing and a little bit of replacement here and there. We did have, at the top of these CMU foundation walls, the church later added wood right on top. And for those of you who don't know, concrete sweats. So whenever we have concrete to wood, we like a pressure treated board. We also like some form of flashing. So we did lift the building up about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch as we went around and added metal flashing for the full perimeter. Structurally, any other notes? You'll see in the back section on the right door to the vestibule that there's no foundation area. And on the left, on the other side of the beam, you see the same thing. Just stacked slate, Slate Hill Baptist Church. So we took all of that slate out, poured new footers, and rebuilt these CMU walls in sections again. You see the blue tape. That's a little bit of how we coated things, and this is everything neatly stacked to stay dry. At this point, the entire building's done. We took out the plumbing, the electrical, the HVAC, the whole thing's just the shell, okay? This is where we took out some of the stacked slate. You'll also see that true beam, another 10 by 10 that was crossed over. And that cutout section is where that HVAC ductwork had been added at some point that rotted out the center beam. Really neat stuff here. I wish I had some photos to show you on the back side of these studs and bracing boards meeting that beam, with some fantastic joinery from the 1800s. So here we are with our footer holes, our sonotubes. We're ready to get some things done and rebuild the floor. Remember, this is a discovery. We thought that we'd have some structural issues down there and a little bit of tune-up on some footers and piers, but we didn't expect we'd get in and see no foundation. All in all, I'd say there's about 19 footers that were put into the area. What we did here, a little bit overkill, but why not, is we dug out the squares and put a platform and then poured our sonotubes, which are these circular cardboard structures, on top of those reinforced platforms. So everything's poured in, we're ready to add our piers. We went with 18-inch and 24-wide piers to support this building. Really, really big concrete units. We've done one other project where we got in and we needed to leave the building standing and there was no foundation. Same thing, 24-inch concrete pier footers, and we rebuilt the whole thing from the inside out. So everything's set up, we're ready to come back in and then start framing out. This was a bit of a puzzle to get those rounded timbers to meet back to that beam, but still be supported by these footers. We had to do a lot of sweeper cuts, and we had to ride out the wood so each piece would fit in correctly. So it was neat meeting with the engineer, with Mary, with our carpenters on site, and having a brainstorming session. At this point, my wife was pregnant, and I actually missed an OBGYN appointment because we kind of got carried away and had some fun. The baby's 6 months old now. All right, so everything's set, we've encapsulated, we've gone ahead and closed in the entire foundation with spray foam, and we built in our new floor. So things are looking good here at the Monticello Inn Cottage. We've added a spiral duct system. I mentioned to you earlier that each of the units will have their own HVAC system, but the overall building will also be on the central heat and air unit. And then you'll see our new floor is stacked in this photo in some areas, but then the old floor, the 1.5-inch hard pines, are stacked on each side. I would say that about 40% of the old floor had to go. It was rotten out. They're hard pines, so it's good solid wood, but on the outside is the gum wood, and the bugs had gotten to the gum wood, and we wouldn't have been able to reuse it. So we kept what we could. Again, varying widths. So imagine putting pieces this big and this big together and making it all come flush. It's a bit of a puzzle. What we did is we met with Mary, and she decided, let's get a little extra square footage of the new hard pine floor, and we'll approach that puzzle when we get to it. All right, so outside of the building now, you'll see that commercial kitchen is this newly framed structure that has the gray unfinished siding. We've built it up, we've plugged out our HVAC systems. It was really neat. I'll take a minute here to acknowledge that Mary really studied out this building, I think from 2023. She worked with the church members, made sure that they understood the vision for the property, and worked with the team not only through the architect, but through a mechanical engineer, and that was worth its weight in gold. So every call out for the HVAC units, the way that we would plumb this building, the electrical layouts, all detailed to the T. As a builder, there's nothing more valuable than that. We have a plan set, we can follow it as best possible. Another quote from Mary here. Mary's driven by sustainable land use, native plants, berms, soils, like I mentioned earlier, and is really taking this property to make that statement. So I encourage you next summer to come back out to Monticello Inn Cottage, see what it looks like, and then the following summer in 2027, come out and see those plants once they've grown in and she's done a little more site development. I would say part of the inn experience is the bed and breakfast, the inn and cottage. So the commercial kitchen is that, it's commercial. We actually recently had the county come back out to understand, well, this is a residential permit, but how do we treat this kitchen? Mary opted through her culinary arts school experience to have a 12-foot commercial hood. We've done some restaurants on the UVA corner, we've done some restaurants on 29. 12-foot hood is, pretty solid. What we call that in code is a type 2 hood. So that dictates that that space has to meet a commercial code rating. What does that mean in building? Well, it means that we have to fireproof the room. It means that we have to put a sealed floor on the room, rubber codes, plastic walls or wipeable walls, and it kind of details for such a small place a lot of different call-outs. All right, again, taking that middle section that were just Sunday school rooms and making them live-in suites meant that we had to put a lot of drain work in. So we cut out a fair amount of the plumbing throughout the building, dug it all out, very messy job. You'll see where we filled in with cinder blocks. We call those CMUs for the previous walls and created our new layout. And then we put in our plumbing, we put down our lines, put a protective layer over it, and we poured the concrete back in. So that's the same hallway in all of the 3 shots, and each bedroom kind of follows suit where we had to go through this work. This is where we're feeding into 2 different bathrooms and kind of rounding about each of the flows of the drain line. So back to the mechanical plans, it's very important that someone lays that out so we can make those cuts precisely and not just open up the whole floor. Saves time, saves money. All right, So we framed up the walls, and because it's an inn cottage experience, we put in sound insulation through each of the interior walls, and we closed off all the living space. And on the right side here, we're actually in the commercial kitchen looking out to the sanctuary. So how do you have an 1800s historic building and then add a 12-foot commercial hood next door to it? Well, you have to think about fire. So this is a shaft wall system. We actually built this different than the plans called out due to some material availability, and we're currently in discussion with the county about approving the new UL listing for the fireproofing. So it's really neat to see how with the existing structure, in some areas it's as simple as new walls, insulated in, put the sheetrock up, people can move in. And in other areas that actually butt up to that historic sanctuary, there's a little more thought that goes into the plans. All right, I'm gonna see how we're doing on time because I'm nervous as heck up here, okay? 6:30, not bad. And we'll talk a little bit more about the back of the site plan. So earlier I mentioned, let's follow the dark gray area up the side into the back parking lot. On the right side, we have a zoom in of this area. At one point, all of this was on the right side of the plat and moved to the left. You'll see the 3 horizontal rectangles are our cottages. These cottages were planned to be built on CMU walls, and due to the slope of the topography there, we'd be looking at 10-foot to 12-foot elevations off the back, where the front would be flush to the ground. What we've opted to do there in Mary's Phase 3 program is build on piers. It's going to save some cost, and then we'll sheet in the side of those walls and cover them. Outside of the 3 cottages, there's a full modular building that's going into the back, and that's the duplex-esque building that'll have 2 separate rental areas in it. Site development, if you look with me at the bottom right of the left photo, where the yellow lines are, that's one of our septic drain fields, and then above that, another septic drain field. So we cleared the land for the driveway, we cleared out both fields. The roundabout driveway on the church was made of asphalt. That's a petroleum product. So in this bottom right septic field, we actually had to receive approval to dig a very deep hole, fill in all of the asphalt, and then put 6 feet of dirt on top. In between those 2 areas, on the left side of the driveway, you may be able to see it says existing cemetery. So it's a church, it has a cemetery, it has a few open lots, and out of the small congregation that was still there, we've had some members drive by and tell us that Mary's promised that they're gonna get to have their forever home there. So it's been neat walking those grounds and kind of understanding how long the members have been at that site. The history in the cemetery alone, you could kind of get lost in. We've spent a few afternoons out there. My favorite tombstone says, "Not dead, just leaving." All right, so our approach to the building is integrity. It's important that we work with a client who doesn't want to cut costs, and we're really fortunate that we have that client on this project. I mentioned earlier having to lift those sanctuary walls to slide in metal flashing. A lot of people would say, hey, if the county's not calling for that, if the DHR isn't calling for it, we don't want to take the cost on. Along each of these steps, as we've met with Mary, we've decided to take action to preserve the building itself. That's what makes the job fun. I mentioned we build houses, we do renovations, we worked on some commercial projects, but these historic jobs have so much character, and you get to put a little bit of your blood, sweat, and tears into something that's going to last another 50 to 100 years before it needs more attention. It's been really nice to approach this as a general contractor with a client who cares about doing things the right way. So we can really say when we stand outside of this building, we've teed it off and we've closed up every button. Now, one of the neat things we did at Commonwealth is we did a LiDAR scan on the building. When we work on historic properties, we're starting to do the LiDAR scan so we can preserve what was and then account for the new layout. We're going to be proud to share this with the Historical Society and with UVA, so it'll be on record. These are just rough edits out of the LiDAR scan. We were able to take some screenshots of that. This shows you the existing church, the vestibule, You'll see this long building parallel to the front of the church. That's that second addition, and then perpendicular to that is the third addition of the building. You can kind of see back there a few tombstones as well, although they don't look like tombstones in this shot. So the LiDAR scan within these sanctuaries are able to capture every single measurement. It gets millions of points that we can come back in and look at in detail. And it's pretty nice because when we close all this up, you want to see, well, how is that line set ran? You could crawl under the hole down there, pop the foam out, come through, or you could just pull up that computer program and everything's laid out for you. The same thing's included in all of the stud walls, existing CMU walls, anything that we've put mechanicals inside of. You're able to revisit this LiDAR scan and see exactly how it was done, where the circuits align. It's a fun thing to get to do. Our team has a new hire as of this year, Chris, who is with the UVA Historical Preservation Committee, as well as UVA Architectural School, and he's brought all these assets and tools onto our team. It's been really nice having Chris kind of take things to the next level, where we don't just have the building last, but we're able to kind of preserve what was there before we start. Yeah, that's Chris. I mean, I think that's pretty cool, right? So the photograph versus the 3D mesh, you kind of see the difference. The 3D mesh we can really refine on the computer, and we'll give those data points again to UVA and the Historical Society. But as far as screenshots, these 360 photographs are what we're able to take. You maybe have seen these in real estate listings where you can kind of walk through the house and take a digital tour. It's neat with this Matterport camera. This is more of the $10,000 range as opposed to the equipment UVA uses that's $40,000, $50,000 a camera. But Matterport gives us the option to take a photo with a few 100,000 points, or we can do a long scan with millions of points. And on the historic jobs, we take the time to capture the millions of points. Another thing that's neat about this in preservation is we used to get the tape out and a notepad and a laptop and actually measure off each piece of trim, the footprint of the room, the ceiling heights, the whole 9 yards. Alex is an architect who's in the crowd tonight, and I'm sure he can sign off that that's a pretty tedious process. A building like this, we probably spent 4 days going through to capture that, and a few days in the office, putting it into the computer. We were able to scan this entire property in about 7 hours, so it's really fun. All right, I think at this point, Chris is just kind of showing off on some of the pictures he can put together. He built this PowerPoint for us, so we'll go to the next shot. You'll see down into our sanctuary. On the left side, you see that lighter colored wood. That's our engineered LVL beams with our new joist structures. And on the right, you'll see those original joists that were placed back in. On the left, it's very dark because, again, no electricity in the building. Currently having the meter set up with Dominion, and we'll cut all the lights back on and do some more scans. There's the full layout. If I could 180 it, it'd be exactly what you see on the architectural plan. So the layout was thought out. It was great. I mean, we didn't really have to make any changes. This building overall hasn't had a lot of design changes. I really can't think of one right now, maybe a bathtub. Other than that, it's been all structural change orders, discoveries, and then those integrity calls where we decide, hey, let's take that extra step to make this building last. I would say that the project started off in phase 1 with a target of about $1.7 million. We've ran change orders on the project through these discoveries where I'd say we're close to $250,000 in on extra money that had to go into the building. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that Mary's ran this rodeo before, so when she did her financial projections in 2023, she had the long-term vision to plan for these costs. But I think it's important to mention in historical preservation work, well, really all construction, you have your constants and you have your variables. As a contractor, we're supposed to walk you through those variable costs. Well, with the historic project, the only constant is the cost of the real estate. It's almost all a variable. So a large impact on this job through change orders themselves. Now, sustainability, no costs were spared. Again, each of the areas is its own climate-controlled space, and then the whole unit has ductwork throughout. We're able to use this with top-of-the-line material. The plant's called out for all the good stuff that you'd like to use. Same thing with our plumbing lines. It's really nice when you get to work on a job that's being done the right way. Insulation, we went ahead and sealed up all the walls that were interior, again, with the soundproofing insulation. And on the outside of the building, we put up a vapor barrier because the majority of both the additions, really all of it, are cinder block walls. Again, concrete sweats, we can't just put wood against that. So the vapor barrier is very important, and then bringing it to modern code to meet the new standards for installation. Community and economic impact. It's really neat to see the neighbors in the community drop by, the previous congregation members, having people from Monticello that we've talked to about the project say, hey, lodging in this area is a must-have, it's a need. And it's great to have a client who kind of saw that need in the community and was able to capitalize on it and give back by preserving this space for us. So preserving the past. We left this steeple on the building, a little bit of an extra cost. We had to clean it up, finish it off, fix a bunch of water that was inside of it, insulate it a special way. But it's a little bit of a homage to the fact that, again, this meeting house became a church, and now it's going to be this lodging space in an inn cottage. All right, I do okay in the meeting. I felt pretty uncomfortable up here at the podium, but I appreciate you bearing with me. Want to give special thanks to the Albemarle Preservation Committee and the Charlottesville Historical Resource Committee, and Preservation Piedmont and Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society have already touched base, but if you haven't given, donated, or joined, please visit the websites or speak to one of us after the meeting. That's the presentation. I'd like to go back to the first slide, but we'll leave it at this, and hopefully we'll have some more fun with questions and answers Olivia can take us through. So thanks for letting me share all that with you. Thanks for bearing with me, and please, spring, summer, come on out to Monticello Inn Cottage, have a glass of wine, have some food, and see what the work looks like.
We can do a few questions if anyone has them. If you want, I can bring the microphone around, so feel free if you have a question, let me know.
Hi, Luke.
Hey, Phyllis.
Thanks for that. It was terrific. I would like you to tell us how the church space itself is going to be used in the future, since, you know, we talk about adaptive reuse and obviously renovating all of this, but preserving the old. But that whole big vestibule and church space, what's the plan for that?
Yeah, great question. So like I said, you can lodge at the building, you can rent one of the rooms, you can also drop by when you're visiting the vineyards and the historic sites. So that front area is going to be a game room and a hosting room. We fireproofed from the commercial kitchen to the space. So there's a closed-in door. Our innkeepers will be able to open that up, serve straight into the sanctuary. Lots of tables for different board games, a few built-in hutches with a range stove, a sink, a full-size bar, and then at the vestibule side of the building, we'll also have a fireplace. So people that are visiting can drop by in the day, and then in the evenings, folks in the cottages, in the back building, and in the church can kind of congregate there, get to know one another, have a glass of wine, and play some games, sit by the fire.
So that's going to be kind of common space.
Yes. Yeah. Our inspectors call it the game room.
Okay, and just a quick second question. You talked about some church members who came by. So what is this an extant church, or it can't be, right? I mean, so when did it cease being an operating church?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah, it'd be great.
So in So in 2018, the Slate Hill Baptist Church was down to only 8 members. They didn't have a pastor at that time anymore. So they chose to give the church to the Antioch Baptist Church to be able to do something with it to help the community, because the Antioch is a little larger. They're trying to build a school. They're doing a lot of nice things for the community. And it sat vacant from 2018 until I purchased it and started renovating with Luke. It just sat there. Nothing was happening to it because it's a difficult site. It has a cemetery right smack in the middle of it where you can't build, you can't run any septic lines, you can't do anything, and a lot of people didn't want to touch it for that reason, and no one really wanted to purchase it. It had been on the market a long time, it had come off the market, and was no longer listed by the time I got around to looking at it, and I had to look through records of who do I actually contact and finally got to someone. So it had just been, unfortunately, just languishing, which I thought was a shame because it's a beautiful building inside. That big main sanctuary. Historic wanted us to keep that big, it's basically 1,000 square foot game room, dining room, whatever you want to call it. They wanted us to keep that intact as it originally was when it was built in the 1830s.
Other questions?
Did the windows need to be replaced or repaired in any way?
Absolutely. All the windows and doors were changed out. A lot of DHR concerns about how we did that. Ultimately went with wooden windows, matched the exact paintwork that was there, cut sheet approvals, the whole 9 yards were a big part of having that all signed off on before we ordered the windows, and there was no turn back. In the back of the building, it was a little bit less of a restriction from the DHR on what windows we used, but again, matched out the profile completely. Great window package, and then our doors, we went with standard steel entry doors that'll last, still match that profile of what was on the church.
This is the part of the program where I get my steps by. Great presentation. Thought that was really interesting. I'm curious, how large is the property that we're talking about?
How many acres is the property?
10.
10 acres.
Just over 10.
I'll tell you something neat. The back of this property butts up to the Morgan Estate across the road from the actual estate house. And it's an agricultural area, beautiful, thick forest. We show up to work one day and there's an access road that's been carved in next door, and they're just clearing acre after acre back there. So now you have these beautiful views of the hills out towards Louisiana and some other things, but it's a deeply forested area, and it's 10 acres right there off the road, and it cuts back to God knows how many acres. It's been fun. How many?
3,400.
3,400. It's been fun having our plumbers, our HVAC guys, our trade teams that are from the Albemarle area tell us all the stories of the hunting they've done back there. And remember when we started, there was a few hippie folk that would park at the church and go crawl out into those 3,400 acres and hang out. And Harry handled that as well.
They were really wonderfully nice.
Yeah.
You had mentioned something about the wine and beer tasting. Are you planning any kind of a vineyard or?
It's a young wine maker who's getting into beer. There's the other way around.
I found that it's not for certain yet. I don't have a signed lease yet, so it could possibly not happen. It's not 100%, but I did find a young vintner who has a long history of making beer, who's just starting out doing wine. And we hope that maybe he can just have a small tasting room on site. But again, I don't have a lease. We haven't filed a building permit for that. He may fall through, we don't know. But that was the hope. But we're not doing any kind of large events or weddings or anything like that. We just don't have the space, the capacity, the parking, all of that. So it would just kind of be more like a extra amenity for guests and a way for, local community members like yourself to be able to come and stop and engage and see the building, and enjoy the cemetery and the grounds. Because it's a beautiful little slice of Albemarle, and y'all know how beautiful it is. You live here.
We did adjust the septic plan, so future placement could go there. Any historic site like this, you start off with the DHR, so Mary had to reach out to the DHR and see how close that building could be to the church itself. And the architects are currently looking at different plans and designs for that building. So it's been neat planning it out. We'll see if it comes into fruition. The next step on the job is phase 3 to put those cottages in that back unit up.
These are just curiosity questions. Was there a well on the site? And were the pews anything that was of interest to keep?
Absolutely, yeah. So back to the tasting room, actually. We were going to have some kind of tasting area inside of the church, and that would have required a fire protection system throughout the entire building. Because of the well and the pressure line on that, to put that much fire protection in the building, we would have needed, I think it was a $55,000 tank that would have held that water in reserve in case there ever was a fire. All in all, when we costed that out, we were close to $200,000 to put that into the unit. And for that cost, we could build something outside of the church. So that's how the cottage idea came to be. Now back to the well, there's an existing well that's going to tie in to the cottages in the phase 3 projects. But the church itself, since we've added so many different bathrooms and we've added the kitchen itself, needs a new well. Well, does anybody remember the name of the church that was there? Slate Hill Baptist Church. So it's right rocky ground. When we went to put the well in, we went 400 down and found a little bit of water. So we fracked it, got that all set. Still, we're going to need to put some pressure tanks inside of the building. We're looking at, with labor, $17K worth of tanks, maybe $25K worth of labor and tanks, as opposed to like a $50,000 tank. So we're putting a second well in. It's had its ups and downs. I'm building the house about 12 minutes down the road towards Fluvanna in the Keswick area. Same thing. We have to frack the ground out there to get the water to come up.
What sort of special permitting do you have to go through in terms of land use?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jenny. We work for a savvy client because it's a live-in space. Believe it or not, this whole project is under a residential permit. So that's been really neat. It's a standard residential permit. It still had some complications between the commercial kitchen, this, that, and the other. But special use permits, I mean, the land development's kind of a mixed bag right now, especially around phase 3. Would you like to speak towards that at all?
Because I do this for a living, I come from a family where we do a lot of historic renovations. Say most of the rental properties my sister and I have developed over the last 10 or 15 years in our career. As we were taught by our dad, it's a family business. Even if we didn't do a historic tax credit, a lot of them they're buildings that are over 100 years old. And so we've gotten really good at reading zoning code and figuring out what can we do where. So I just needed approval to be able to title it in an LLC instead of my name personally, and I did that, I think, before I went to that hearing, I think before I registered for it, before I bought it, and the hearing happened a couple months after me owning it. It was, believe it or not, bed and breakfast in this particular zoning is a by right use, as long as I don't have over a certain number of rooms, which I don't, and as long as I don't have big events like weddings, it was just allowed. So you have to You have to know what you want to do and look for the right property. It also took me about 2 years to find this particular property. It was not a quick, easy hunt. And you asked about church views. Yes, we still have a lot of them, and we'll be repurposing some of them in the main sanctuary space as part of the seating. And yes, I definitely wanted to reuse those. They're oak, okay.
One last question. You've done a lot of work, clearly, to preserve the historic structure and for people to know that it was a church initially. Are you planning to do anything so that guests who come will learn more about the history of that place? Is there going to be any, effort to have a sort of brochure, historic signage, any of that?
We'll definitely have historic signage, some brochures, some information. It'll probably be in our front vestibule and other places like that where you need to hang up artwork, various things. We might have some framed information about, here's the history, here are the old pictures, all that kind of interesting stuff. I was really lucky that a huge amount of information was at the Baptist Historical Society in Richmond at U of R's campus. They had so much available on this building, on this church, on the members, on really everything.
And the fireplace hearth, if you want to mention that.
So as part of buying the, part of buying the building, because this is a deconsecrated church, they said you absolutely have to take down the Slate Hill Baptist Church sign, which is this giant, it's huge. It's like a beautiful slate sign. And I thought, okay, well, if you guys, they said they were going to come get it. It's been 2.5 years, they haven't gotten it. So we've taken it apart so it can be removed, and we're just going to use it as a hearth inside the building because they just don't want it displayed out front. I don't think they mind if we reuse it, but the rule is you can't have it say church in the front since it's been deconsecrated.
I'm curious, does Monticello own the rights to the name Monticello? You have to, it's just on site that they own it for trademarks? Because I think I remember something about Monticello having a trademark.
Just the name Monticello, yes, but I'm legally Monticello Inn Cottage LLC. Much bigger, longer legal.
So the names, that's how we're seeing things like vineyards or whatever. Guest houses.
And the Monticello Foundation's pretty excited about the lodging in the area. All right, that's the dinner bell at 7 o'clock. I'm gonna go take my seat.
Thank you all so much. Thank you. We will have more of our historic preservation lecture series in the new year, and we're excited to be bringing it quarterly. We will be putting out more information as we have more programming, but we hope you all will keep up with what we are doing. Feel free to talk to any of us, Preservation Piedmont, Historical Society, any of us about the work that we are doing. We're happy to talk about it. Everyone have a wonderful evening and get home safely. Thank you so much for coming.
We actually have our next speaker here with us, Preservation Architect Jody Lando, will also be talking about rural churches and schools. So stay tuned for early 2026. Thanks.
Yes.